I think it's live. Yeah, it went live. Perfect. David McDonald, thank you so much for joining me for Growing Up Fundy for a surprise live stream. This is going to be a recorded episode, but then you were like, let's go live. And I was like, hell yeah, why not? So I didn't realize until we logged on, and I said this earlier, that even though we communicate and like I've seen your videos and you've seen my videos and we're on Facebook, we've never actually talked. So this is the first time we've really gotten to sit down and have a conversation. And it's such a weird time to live in where you can know as much as you know about somebody and never have actually spoken to them. But I've enough from me, I suppose. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about your channel, about your life.
Well, yeah, it actually is so weird because I got connected with you, and like we had a quick chat over Facebook or whatever, and then like I immediately put you in like, oh yeah, like this would be a long-term friend, like slot in my head, because like I just know like you're on the same kind of trajectory with your channel and you're doing the kind of same kind of stuff, and like, you know, and we just got on really well. So yeah, and then it feels like I've known you, but this is actually the first time we're probably talking, which is cool. Yeah, so what do you ask? A little bit about me and my channel. My name is Dave McDonald. I'm a former youth pastor, Pentecostal youth pastor, spoke in tongues, all that stuff, and now I'm an agnostic atheist. I went through ministry college and did the rounds there, and now I no longer believe in God. So that's, I mean, there's the whole variety of topics we could go in with that and how that happened. But yeah, that's essentially it.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're going live because I do have so many questions to ask you. I had planned the questions and then we rescheduled the episode. And in that time, I learned so much more that I really have so much to ask you. First, I wanted to give a shout out to Secular Rarity for connecting us. Yeah. And then I'll give a shout out to Rebecca from Bread of Life in the comments. She taught me how to use StreamYard. She's been on my podcast a few times.
Awesome.
Yeah, but the first thing I was curious about was my frame of reference for Christianity, for fundamentalism and evangelicals is very strictly American. What is it like in Australia in terms of, is there any evangelical or fundamentalist presence in government? Do they do a pretty good job of keeping that separated? Does it seem comparable from what you know about American?
We had the former prime minister like go on stage with at a Hillsong conference and get prayed for. So there's stuff like that, but that was really frowned upon. Like that was like, like a lot of people frowned upon that.
I completely forgot Hillsong is basically from Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, they started in Sydney. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fun fact. One of my friends in that I used to go to church with, their family were super well off and connected, and Bobby Houston, Brian's wife, had her 50th birthday at his house in Noosa. So like he'd show me the like home video footage, and I remember one time I came in to the house and the Hillsong like band was there. They were like doing the new Hillsong Noosa church at the time. And they were there, and I was like, oh, they're all eating pizza, and they had a couple of beers and stuff. And I was like, oh, and I went in and I was like, oh, Marty, I've seen you on TV. And he's like, oh, how you doing? And I'm like, oh, this is weird. I was just over there to see my friend, and like, it's just, yeah, it was just it's a wild ride. Yeah.
Interesting. So there, when you were growing up, if you were to say to somebody like, I'm Pentecostal, would that be strange? Would that be weird? Or was that pretty common?
Well, I probably wouldn't have said Pentecostal back then, because I would have just said Christian, because I don't know if I would have considered, I was very hardline when it came to my belief systems. I don't know if I would have considered a lot of those other Christian sects actually Christian. I would have believed that, you know, the way to salvation is narrow and the way to destruction is wide. And, you know, I would point to scriptures in the Bible where it says, you know, we will know disciples by their baptism of the Holy Spirit, by speaking in tongues and by laying on of hands and healing the sick. That's how you'll know if you are a disciple of Jesus. So for me, one of my first preachers I ever did at church was, you know, the Holy Spirit can be working in the little old lady at the back of the Anglican church just as much as it could be for us as we fall on the floor and are laughing and the Spirit and everything else like that. But the difference is I believe that you I guess needed to have that connection, that you needed to be baptized in water and of the Spirit. I wasn't hardlined about it, but I believe that's how God would move. So I would just say I was a Christian, and I would say to people that, you know, God wants to heal you of whatever you're going through, and God wants to love you, and God loves you and cares for you, and, you know, there's a whole party in heaven when someone gets saved, you know, that kind of stuff.
We said the same thing. Oh, there's a party in heaven. Everybody's celebrating in heaven when somebody gets saved. And you were a pretty devout Christian until into adulthood. How old were you, do you think, when you first started having the inklings that you weren't Christian anymore?
Well, so it was a long journey. So I said, but like, what happened is I was a youth pastor. I was hired by the senior pastor and then given to the care of the associate pastor. I was recommended by the previous youth pastor, so that's why I kind of got hired. I was his youth leader. And one of the things that, so I was hired by the associate pastor, and immediately they told me, like, I don't believe you're old enough. I was only 19, and I was taking care of like 100 youth on a Friday night, which is like a half the church.
Right.
So fair enough, kind of. But essentially, like, there was this like process of weaseling me out, and it was like a full weasel. Like, it was I could go into that in more detail one day, but essentially I got like pushed out of the position. Anyway, I moved on from that. I ended up recommending the next kind of youth pastors and stuff, and I helped them with the transition. I ended up moving on from that emotionally, and I was like totally cool with everyone. But I went on this like spiral downhill emotionally. And I started getting, I had a friend who moved into our like boys share house. He smoked a lot of weed. And then I got interested and I was like really sad and lonely and depressed. And then he introduced me to weed, and then I loved weed. And then, when I wasn't smoking weed, I was anxious and depressed. So I started smoking cigarettes because I'd get the like head rush and I'd feel better. And like, it became like this, like, I quickly became like spiraling out of control, I guess, because I didn't have that like framework of like a direction and a destiny I was kind of going in. I left school to do youth, to go through ministry college and to do, and to become a youth pastor. And then now that was kind of taken from me. I didn't know what I was doing in life. And I decided to move down to Sydney and start film school. I did that for a little while. I dropped out of film school, and I just ended up suffering with like really bad depression and anxiety. And then through like the process, I decided to build what I called like a more balanced relationship with God. So like, I had considered myself like a drug addict at the time, even though I was only really smoking weed. I was very confused in like, cause, and this is something I could go into, but like, hey Nitty, I just see Nitty in the chat. I was very confused in like what it means to be to really be hitting rock bottom. Like, so for me, like, swearing was like, I'm off the rails, you know, like that was like like as a Christian, like I used to go like I was pretty extreme in people call me Captain Christian. I was pretty extreme to my beliefs. So like anything below that was like like I'd fallen off the wagon. So like I had this very different understanding of rock bottom. So for me, smoking weed for a few weeks was like, I'm a drug addict, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short, me and my wife and I ended up started dating. I moved back up to the Sunshine Coast to be with her and all that kind of stuff. Well, not to be with her, but we ended up being together. And in that process, I developed a crushing and horrible anxiety disorder. I went to therapy. I got sorted for that. It was like an OCD type thing. And in that process, I kind of discovered that what I used to call the voice of God was actually like OCD tics, were like things that were going on mentally, like intrusive thoughts or things like that.
Like self-sabotaging intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, 100%. Anyway, so that's like the process of like where I was at, but I was still a Christian at this stage. So this is now maybe like 2015, 2016. But then what happened was two things happened kind of simultaneously. One is I got interested in young earth creationism and evolution, and I wanted to determine which was true. I got interested in science, and I was like, I watched the Bill Nye versus Ken Ham debate, which is like famous.
Yes.
And something at the end was like, it was like someone asked the question, what if anything would change your mind? And at the time, I thought they both made pretty good points. Funny enough, now I look back and I'm like, what points did Ken Ham even have? Anyway, but we get to the end and it's like, what if anything would change your mind? And Bill Nye said, evidence, just any evidence. And one fish going from one fossil to another strata from, and Ken Ham said, nothing would change his mind. And I went, whoa. And I look back and I was like, that doesn't seem right. Like,
no,
I was like that. And so I created this document called The Objective Truth of Origins, and I started looking into the evidence, and I realized that to look into the evidence, I needed to take off my God glasses and look at the evidence with as little bias as possible. I couldn't assume that I was like religious. I couldn't assume that the world was 6,000 years old. I couldn't assume anything. I just had to look at the evidence for what it was and kind of go to where the direction of where it was leading.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I started noticing cracks, and then those cracks started to become bigger and bigger and bigger, and eventually I'm in this like giant canyon going, what the fuck, like this is a huge crack. So that was happening at around the same time, in the same few years as the same-sex marriage plebiscite in Australia. And I started asking, which was where Australia was voting on the rights for on whether or not LGBT folks should have the right to get married. I was like, okay, like I can see the arguments from the Bible, but like, should we be pushing those onto people who don't believe the Bible? And like, I was asking Christians these questions, and I was getting really dishonest answers. And I got to the point where I was arguing with people all night on Facebook, and I was trying to be really polite, and people were actually reaching out to me and saying, thank you for having these conversations, blah, blah, blah. But I was just trying to get to the bottom of it. And I got to the stage where 24 people had challenged me, had like reached out to me and said, you're wrong because of XYZ. And I said, okay, well, like publicly, this is all there still. And I can go, okay, well, do you want to have a conversation about it? Yeah, sure. And I said, and would go down this syllogism, like, well, why do you think this? Because of this. Okay, well, do you know about this? Yes, I do. Okay, well, we've got all the way down to the end where either I'd have to change my mind, or they'd have to change their mind, or they'd have to bring up more evidence. And every time we got down to the bottom where my questions just didn't have an answer anymore, they would disappear. I would send them messages, I would call them, I would text them, and they would delete all their comments like it never even happened. And then the very next day, they'd be spewing the same arguments they admitted that I debunked the day before. So, and I looked at this and I went, I said, wow. And I said, is my faith really this dishonest? Like, and that took me by surprise. And then that's when I guess I started to really look at like, why do I believe in God? Okay, what are the reasons? Okay, well, I grew up a Christian. Is that a good reason? No, because if I grew up in Islam, I'd be, I think Islam was true. So that's not a good reason. So like, write that off. What about the power of prayer? Okay, well, we can test that. Like, I remember praying to, remember having really bad. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Bread of Life. I remember praying to. I remember one night I was really anxious, and what would happen, because at the time I had really bad panic attacks and stuff. And what I did is I was like, I'm going to pray to God, and I'm going to ask that, hey, Tim, I was going to ask that I'm going to pray, and God, like, and that I'm going to be okay the next day, that I'm going to be totally fine. And then I thought, well, instead of praying to God, because this happened all the time, like a few times a week, I said, I'm going to pray to a jug of milk. So I prayed to a jug of milk. Oh, no, I think it was a jug of milk, or it was myself. I think I was like, either pray to myself or jug of milk. So I said to myself, like, David, I pray that you're going to be fine and A-okay tomorrow, and you're going to wake up and it's all going to be better. And then I went to sleep, and the next day I was fine. I felt awesome. Like, everything was awesome. And I totally forgot about that prayer until like halfway through the day. And I was like in such a good mood that day. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I prayed yesterday. And I was like, I wonder if, and I was like, if I prayed to God, that would have been evidence of God. Like, and then I was like, well, and I was like, is there any evidence of like God healing someone where it couldn't be chance or placebo or spontaneous remission or something, like, and then I started looking for it. I couldn't find it. And then, just slowly over time, like, sorry to go on a giant ramble, but like slowly over time, these like, the, prayer fell apart, young earth creationism fell apart, the Bible fell apart, and all that stuff. And then I realized, like, what reason do I have to believe in a God anymore? And
and it almost sounds like you proved positive affirmations were just as that had just as many benefits. You're like, wait a second, I basically meditated yesterday and I feel better today. And and to your point earlier, I always find that people are so surprised when you're having these conversations and they say, well, what if evidence came out tomorrow that this was the actual truth and that you'd been wrong the whole time? And I'm like, then I would change what I believe. If it was evidence, I would change my opinion. I would say, wow, that's wild. I'm glad there's evidence to pull me out of believing what's incorrect, because evidence and facts are what matter. I think the difference between evidence and facts versus a lot of faith-based belief systems is you're allowed to change your mind in one.
Yeah,
And then in the other,
exactly.
if you change your mind, it's a downside. It's looked upon negatively because changing your mind is tantamount to losing your faith, when in reality, you're just changing your mind. You're just seeing what you need in order to believe that now. And so it's very interesting that continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So no. I was interrupting you. Sorry. It's the same. Like it's the same thing with like it's a good thing too. Here's the thing: is like you look at losing your faith when you're a Christian as like a negative thing, like you're doing a bad thing, a naughty thing. But for me, it was like it was actually the hard thing to do, to question my faith, and it was like the morality that was taught to me at church that helped me leave my religion. Like it was like I was taught that truth was the most important thing, that we had to follow the truth, and I did. And it was like, and I was being punished, and like all my Christian friends were like, you know, David's off the rails. What the fuck does it even mean? Like, you know, like, like I'm following the evidence where it leads. Like, what do you want from me? Like, and it's like to deny that evidence would be to deny reality. Would be to, you know. So so it's like this thing where it's like you feel like you're doing the right thing, but you've been programmed to believe that you're doing the wrong thing by questioning your faith. It's like it's bizarre. It's like it's yeah.
In a lot of especially Christian-based religions, and the evangelical and fundamentalist religions we have here in the American South are very bad about this. They say if you start to question anything, you're questioning your faith. So instead of opening room for a conversation, instead of allowing you to be like, why is this the thing that doesn't seem to add up? Instead of encouraging you to go look into it, I think a lot of people know that if you start to look into it, you'll start to find that maybe things don't add up, maybe things don't make sense, and it will take you somewhere other than the church. And instead of embracing your curiosity and making the church someplace where you can explore those questions and talk to your elders or whatever they're called in your church that you go to, they're like, no, this is just a blanket. You're losing your faith, and this is the devil coming to get you. So be careful. You're showing weakness when you ask questions. When I honestly think a lot more people would stay religious if they were encouraged to seek answers and openly ask questions to their elders in the church. But I think that's part of it too, because they know if you go seeking those answers, you'll go finding them, but it's not going to be the answers they want you to find and to have. And a lot of things aren't going to make sense. But so I watched your video on how you had heard the voice of God, and it ended up being basically an OCD tick. But something that I was curious about was you talked a lot about anxiety in that video, and you talked a lot about the anxiety that was plaguing you. And I was curious, do you think that anxiety came from you, one, losing your job at the church, and two, as you slowly found your way away from religion, do you think that actually triggered your anxiety because of what you'd been taught about, you know, sin and hell, and if you had a similar experience like I did, where it's like, oh, you're losing your faith, that's a sin, or do you think it was totally unrelated to that?
I don't think it was totally unrelated. It's hard to kind of pinpoint it, because there's like biological factors and then there's psychological factors. I used to be told by some pastors that what you're going through is like 50% spiritual and 50% psychological. And it's like, how are you making that division? Like, how do you know that? But I think it definitely didn't help. That's the big thing. Like I was like, why would I go to therapy when I should go to Christian counseling, where, you know, God has all the answers? Like, why would I do that? And it was almost like this admitting defeat. Like you don't have faith enough. And it's also like, you know, you kind of believe that Satan is like, you know, is the one attacking you, and it dramatizes the whole thing. I think that if you were to, I think you could say that if I didn't have these religious beliefs, I definitely would have. You know what? Actually, I can think of something. When I used to be like, what I was quote unquote on fire for God, I used to get a lot of anxiety all the time, just naturally. I think I was just naturally more of an anxious person.
Yeah.
And I used to drive into the city, into Brisbane City. It's like an hour south of me. It's where Ken Ham actually studied. But we used to, yeah, I know. So I used to drive through the city. And I used to be anxious, really anxious about it, terrified. And I would pray and I would ask God to calm me down and make me drive safe, and it felt fine. When I lost that, it was like, what do I grab a hold of?
Right.
And
your life raft is gone.
Yeah. And there's this one time, I don't think I've told this story on stream before. There's I want to see if I can share my screen.
Oh yeah.
With you.
Do I need to give you some kind of, let's see.
Yeah, I'll click share in a sec. Okay. But this is a good story. I don't think I've shared this.
I'm excited.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Thank you, Tim. Tim says Sydney is a fantastic interviewer. Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, you are. You're actually really good. I would say that you're one of the best that I've had the pleasure of being interviewed by so far.
I am just very nosy. I'm just very nosy. That's all. I just want the tea.
Okay, this is super annoying, but because it's all right, because it's not showing me exactly what I want to show. But so if you can click share now. So there's this point called Point Art, right, where I live. So if you look down here, so it's like those rocks down there. I'm just trying to see if there's a better shot. Here it is. So if you see this section here, I wonder if I can zoom in. Thank you, iStock. But so one day I decided to go out into this surf to go surfing, right? But the waves were probably like 10 times as big. They were like massive waves. Is this even? I'm trying to pretty sure this is the same spot. Anyway, the point is, I don't even know if I can find the spot. Anyway, this is the spot, but just so we get context, you can lower the screen now. Sorry, but so anyway, what happened is I went to go spearfishing, and I went to go like trying. I didn't have my spear gun, but I was like, I'm going to go out and practice my breath hold. But I didn't have my glasses when I got out there, and when I got out there, it was like white. Everything was white. Apparently, it was like cyclone swell, and it was like bigger swell than we've had in ages. But I couldn't really tell. I just like, oh yeah, whatever. And I had fins on that were really big, and I was kind of going out there to like practice my breath hold and get fit and stuff. And before I even got in the water, like the waves come and swept my snorkel away. So I only had the goggles, and I was like, well, this is going to be hard. And anyway, but what you do, if you bring that up again, that photo up again, sorry.
You're good.
So along this ridge here is like you swim out along these rocks, and they look tiny here, but like in real life, they're like, this is like high tide, but you swim out along this ridge here, and then you end up in this like spot here, and that's where you go spearfishing out here. But what I did is I swam out here, and the waves were so big, I just got sucked in front of these rocks, and I was essentially in a washing machine.
Wow.
So it was like waves were coming this side, and this side, and I was struggling to keep my head above the water. And I was kicking really hard, and you can lower the screen now, but it's like I was kicking really hard, and I was trying to like stay above the water, and I realized I can't stay above the water. I'm going to drown. So I started like screaming out for people, and this swell was just huge, and I was like, why am I out here? I couldn't get out of the situation. I couldn't like swim out further into the ocean because the waves were too big, or go left or right. They were like kind of coming from both sides, and the only thing behind me were the rocks. And I realized at that moment I should pray and get my life right with God. And then I realized all of a sudden, oh no, that's right, I don't believe in God. Yeah. And it was that moment of being out there drowning and realizing I don't believe in God. There's no one here to save me. And I ran I calculated like my chance of getting out of it. And I was like, this is just my thoughts, but I'm like, there's a greater chance of me dying here than there is living. I'm not going to be able to get out of this. Like, and I'm so out of breath. I'm like, I'm going to sink. Just keeping my head above the water. So, that was pretty rough. So I made the decision at the time to swim into the rocks, like to get out of. So I had these like huge waves, and I just swam I swam as hard as I can with the waves into the rocks, and I just got minced up. So like all my legs were just covered up. I got onto the rocks and I was waiting for the next wave to like come in, and I took my fins off and I flicked them off, and then the next wave hit me, and I like the little barnacles were all over the rock, and I just scraped my hands and my knees. Nearly fell off like a cliff that was like 3 meters, like that dropped off into more hard rocks.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And I quickly like stumbled up along. I was like all dizzy and disorientated, and then jumped down, and I got out of that situation, and I was just covered in blood. And you know, I called my wife, she didn't answer her phone, and I like got in the car, blood everywhere, and I like drove back home, and I like pulled up, and I was like, "You never answer your phone." She's like, "Oh my god." I'm like, "Take me to the hospital." I'm like blood everywhere. But it was at that moment, like out there, like in the ocean, and realizing like I didn't have that safety net anymore. Like I didn't have that like I'm going to a better place, and like I'm going to die. Like and I don't know if it was ego or if it was something to like where I thought to myself like maybe I should pray, oh there isn't a God, but like maybe it was ego stopping me from like praying anyway or something. Like I'm trying to psychoanalyze myself a little bit. But it's like, but yeah, risked it, everything. Yeah.
So do you think in that moment, do you remember having any regret at all, or any like maybe God is real, or were you still, even in that moment, even in your scariest moment, still like he's not real, I'm not going anywhere better?
Well, it's hard because I wonder if like I said, I wonder if it was just like, I'm being really honest, I wonder if it was just like an ego thing. Like, no, I don't believe in God. But yeah, I don't think it's hard. I don't there was no like definitely no peace I'm going anywhere better. But it was like um it's one of those things like when I read the Bible, just sorry to divert, but when I read the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, or some like religious text or something that really speaks to me, I feel this warm sensation of like love or like awe or whatever. I get the same experience when I look at the Milky Way. I get the same experience when I think about evolution and how we're all like connected. I don't necessarily think that means anything though. Like, so I try to build my worldview of like rational thought. So I wouldn't say like evolution is true because it makes me feel nice. I would look at the like the reason it makes me feel nice is because the evidence is overwhelming and it's beautiful.
There's a lot of things that are true that I don't like, and they don't make me feel good, but they're true. Exactly. And there's enough evidence to say that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so it's hard. So in some sense, like maybe in that situation, maybe if I started to really drown, like I was taking on water and something, and I was like in a full panic, I might have like cried out to God or something because of an emotional reason. But I don't know if that is a valid like I don't think that way that brings any. I might have also called out to my mother, like or my father. I have no idea. Like, so you know.
And when the fear is that you're going to die, even if you called out to God, even if you call out to your mom, if you still die in that moment, you're still dying, regardless of whether God is real, regardless of whether he's not. Like, you're at the end of the day, you're still dead, and that's what is scary in that moment, the dying part. So I can see how that wouldn't matter at all. You're like, regardless of who's going to be there afterward, if anything, I'm dying right now.
Yeah, exactly. Have you heard that? Sorry to ask you a random question. I'm used to being in the asking seat.
Yeah,
but,
ask away.
Which, by the way, everyone, you're coming on the channel on Deep Drinks soon. Did we even talk about Deep Drinks? We didn't. I have a channel called Deep Drinks where we talk about religion, philosophy, and human rights. And you're coming on soon, and that's going to be amazing.
I'm coming on next Friday here in the States. Next Friday, 7 p.m. CST.
Awesome. And Secular Rarity is coming on tomorrow. So, tomorrow for me. So, yeah. But there's this quote by Marcus Aurelius. Have you heard his quote by about gods?
I don't think so.
So he says, here we go. I found it. How quick am I? Live a good, like, I'm so awesome. Live a good life. If there are gods and they are just, then they will not care how devout you have been, but will welcome you based on the virtues you have lived by. If there are gods but unjust, then you should not want to worship them. If there are no gods, then you will be gone, but you will have lived a noble life and will live on in the memories of your loved ones.
Yes.
And it's like,
Yes.
yes,
I
yes.
completely agree. Yes, I completely agree with that. It's one of those where, like, after you read some of the things that the Bible claims is true, you're like, why would I want to serve that guy? Even if I die and that guy's the one that's been the guy the whole time, why would I want to serve that guy? That sounds like a
Mm,
horrible time. That does not sound like a good
mm.
time. Very interesting. I love that. I love that. And so when you finally came to the realization where you're like, even though I've dedicated my entire life to this part of my adulthood, it's mattered so much to me, I no longer believe this. Was there a mourning period at all? Did you feel a weight lifted off your shoulders? Did it matter at all? Or were you just kind of moving forward?
There was a huge zealousness for life. I became so much more excited and stoked about traveling, about seeing the world, about being healthy, about enjoying my relationship with my friends and family and my wife and my new kid, I guess. Um, so that was really cool. It was also like extremely heartbreaking because it was like
Yes.
learning about like all of a sudden you realize like I remember going almost shortly after deconstructing. I remember going to a family event that was like a baptism, and this one family we know has like many kids, 9 or 10, and there were the father was explaining to the kids what we're doing. Oh, we're doing a baptism, and as a Christian, someone gives their old life away and they become a new creature when they come out of the water and all this stuff. And I remember looking at these kids who were all at awe, looking at their father and the people who weren't their father were looking at him. And I remember just being so sad, like being so like heartbroken, like these kids are like eating this up.
Yeah.
And, it's like cool tradition and everything, but like it comes with baggage, like it comes with
Totally.
baggage, and that made
Yes.
me really sad. Yeah, so things like
Yeah.
that were hard to deal with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So much of religion is, I think, steeped in tradition. And while tradition itself is really cool, I love traditions. I do traditions. Like, I'm from the deep south, the mountain folks. We do tradition all the time. We do tradition best, right? We have traditional recipes and music, and we have a family reunion we've been having for like 300 years. But when part of that
Actually, 300.
tradition, literally,
Oh wow, that's so
yeah,
cool.
we've
That's
we've
so
had the
cool.
yeah, and it's been on a Friday every single year, and every year they try to start a petition to have it on a Saturday, and every year it fails. It's been doing that for like
Oh,
200 or 300
wow,
years.
that's
Yeah.
so cool.
And I love that aspect of tradition. But when we start to talk about religious tradition, when we're like, the tradition tells me that I'm going to burn in hell for certain decisions, or tradition tells me that certain types of people should not be allowed to exist because their existence is sinful and I should avoid them. And even though the same book that says you should treat everybody the same is also the same book that people claim to quote when they're making laws against other people and discriminating against other people, that's like, get rid of that tradition. That like, tradition does not mean good. Just because
Mm,
old people did it and they did it for lots of years does not mean it's good. The
yeah,
Mayans sacrificed people all the time with their beating hearts still beating, cut them out of their chest, does
mm,
not make it a good tradition. I'm glad we got rid of that tradition. I'm glad it's gone.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point. Yeah, it's yeah, 100%. It's
Like, old people
it's
didn't know what they were doing any better than we do. Why do we keep doing the terrible things that they were doing? They didn't know any
well,
better.
religion is like social, like is great for organizing society, until a society
Totally.
gets to like a certain scale. Like if you've got like, well, how many people in the world are gay? Like, what's the percentage of people who are gay?
Probably
It's
a lot
like
more than we think.
I think it's like I think it's only like I think it's like 10% of people. Or, but I mean, obviously there's a spectrum.
Right. And it probably also matters what country they're from, whether or not they'd actually report being gay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm seeing some like there's some flawed statistics or something. So it's like 7%, 10%, but like it's not a high amount. So let's
It's
say you have a community of
negligible.
like a tribe of like 100 people. Well, then you have like one person maybe who's attracted to the same sex, and it's like, well, what are they going to do? And then you've got like a tribe of 200 people. It's like, well, like if that couple like each other, I guess, like if those two gay men
If
or
they have to be
lesbians like
two
each
men
other.
or two women.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But then all of a sudden you get like 10,000, or and those issues become like more, there becomes like groups within this, like certain social groups within this like bigger group, and it's like they're they're that group of people. That group of people doesn't contribute to our overall, like they're not producing children or whatever, like they're like whatever reason they have. And then you get to like global scale, and what's happened like recently is like the internet has connected the world so profoundly that
Yes.
there's like some amazing statistics where like you ask conservative how many teenagers they think are trans these days, and they say something like 20%. You're like, 20%? Like what? Like what are you talking about? Like it's it's this thing where like the media and like how we see the world is amplified in all these different
Right.
areas, and
Yes.
yeah.
And in order to justify the hatred, in order for things like Fox News and these, far right conservative networks, in order to justify the level of hatred they have for a group of people, they have to make it sound like a larger group of people. They have
Mm.
to fluff the numbers. They have to make it sound like it is this army of people coming to take your teenagers, change their gender, turn them into Democrats. They have to make it this large. They want it to sound like atheists are just taking over the world, gays are taking over the world, transgenders,
Oh,
Mexicans are taking over America, because like otherwise you're going to react the way that we react and go, why are you so bothered by such a like tiny group of people? I don't understand. Why are you freaking out about maybe two people for every 200? That they're not thinking about you, by the way. They're definitely not thinking about you at all. But like these groups that, and sadly these groups also do things in the name of their religion and in the name of God, and I know a lot of Christians who would say we're not with those people, but at the same time it's like they're still doing it in the name of God. You're like, they have to pump it up so much in order to justify how much hatred they have. And I've
mhm.
always wondered why. Like what, I
Yeah,
have I have hated things with a passion. I've hated them with a passion. Certain movies, certain foods, I have hated things. But I've never once hated something so much that the next day I wrote to my congressman and wanted to change legislation so that nobody else, even the people who like that thing that has no impact on my life whatsoever, other than maybe having to see them in public, I've never felt that much hatred for something. And
I
like,
know, and it's
where
like
does that come from?
it's like you hate. My wife hates custard, right? But she never hates it so much that she wants me to stop eating it, or like someone
Yeah,
else to stop eating it. Like
yeah,
it's so
yeah,
bizarre.
yeah.
Also, your chat has pointed out that I got my maths wrong. A tribe of 100 people, you have 7 to 10 people being gay. Yeah, whoops. Yeah, but yeah, hopefully the point still got across. Yeah.
Listen, I failed math every year too. I didn't notice. But it's just wild to me. Like, whenever people have just like an anger and a hatred towards something, especially when it's somebody I feel close enough that I can ask this to, I'm always like, is it costing you money? No. Is it changing the way that you have to drive to work or the way that you have to commute? Or do you not get to work from home anymore because of this thing? No. Okay. Are they threatening you directly? Like, did they say anything? No, they didn't. Okay. Did they harm your pet? No. What's what's the
Mm.
problem? Like, what? I genuinely I don't
Well,
understand.
I think a big part of it is it always blew my mind. It's like though, like I saw a friend's mum during the same-sex marriage plebiscite post on Facebook. It was like a "Love is Love" poster in the airport, and they said, "Oh, does this have to be slammed down our throat at every corner?" And I was like, "What do you like? I don't know. Like you're going to drive past like 30 churches on the way home,
Yeah,
and like listen to your Christian radio stations, and listen to like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, what are you
yeah,
talking about?"
yeah.
Um,
There's a man on my corner every day, every single day. He's out there with a big poster about how we're going to hell if we don't repent. Every single day,
oh,
every
really?
day,
I
right
would
out there. Yep,
I would
right outside.
totally if I would totally go do, like, arguments with him, like,
Well,
and
the thing
record him.
is, I have never once in my entire life seen anyone out on that corner with a Black Lives Matter or LGBTQ plus or anything about being a Democrat or anything at all. It's only ever been that guy. And so I'm
Mhm,
like, where's this war on Christianity everybody's talking about? Because like you said, I live in Tennessee. There is a church everywhere. Even across the street from me is like a Unitarian unilateralist whatever church. Like they're everywhere. And I'm just like, if we really want to talk about people that put stuff so many places that you can't turn your head without seeing it, can we talk about who's really doing that?
Mm.
Are you going to follow your own rules? So you agree that I shouldn't put my sign up, so you're going to take yours down, right? You're going to take down the Bible verses that are taped all over my gas station. Bible verses. Somebody went around and taped them up and they just got to leave them there. That's not vandalism all of a sudden? Like, it's just
I
weird.
know. It's a bizarre, it's like this double standard. It drives me nuts. We're gonna have a whole discussion about politics. I know it's probably not the time and place, but like, man, like the rest of the world is like looking on in America like, are you okay? Like at the moment, like with all the stuff that's happening over there, like it seems crazy. Like
it's wild. And I have a guest who was just on a couple days ago, so his episode isn't out yet, but he had a great line and I just thought it really spelled it out perfectly. He said, some groups of people, when they're no longer allowed to spew their hate speech and to yell their hateful comments, they feel like not being allowed to be hateful is the same as being persecuted against. He said when you tell them that you don't want to hear their message and you're not going to give them a platform, they take that as them being persecuted. And I was like, that's it. Like, that's when they think they're being persecuted. And it's wild.
I said something slightly less eloquently. I said it was the same-sex marriage plebiscite again. It was like, Christians think that persecution is society taking away the big stick they've been whacking everyone with.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great way to say it. And so Tim said, it's better taping up dumb quotes than buying a new assault rifle. But I will remind you, I'm in Tennessee. They were probably on their way to do it. Like nobody said that guy didn't also buy an assault rifle that day.
There's the most frustrating Christian apologist in my living rent-free in my brain at the moment is Cameron Bertuzzi of Capturing Christianity, who just posts the most flamboyant Christian apologetics online and then refuses to engage with anyone. I've asked him on Deep Drinks 100 times. Like, he's seen the tweets, like he's replied to them and stuff. But he recently tweeted, by the way, he always does this, by the way, Christians and Muslims should work together to combat atheism. And I'm like, and we're like, what? And then later on, he clarified, atheism isn't much of a global threat, unlike the Christians who have just made being gay a death penalty in Uganda, statistically, but is nonetheless a serious intellectual threat. An intellectual threat. Talking here of academic atheism, not online atheism. Just because atheism isn't a big global threat doesn't mean it's not worth engaging and responding to. I have no idea what the fuck Cameron thinks atheism is.
Well, and also like, engaging and responding. That's so you agree you should engage and respond? Like,
he just refuses. I just don't know. It's like combating abstinence. You know what I mean? Like, we need to combat abstinence. You know, people need to be having sex. It's like, if someone doesn't want to have sex, they don't have to have sex, dude. Like,
they don't have to. And what I've discovered personally, I'm not saying I discovered this, like many people have thought this, but I realized the other day is that people act as though the Bible says that if anyone does these things, you go to hell. Like, if gays get married anywhere, you go to hell. If anyone does these things, and that's not at all what it says. And I think a problem we run into is a lot of people who are devoutly religious have never read the Bible. And a lot of people who are no longer religious have read the Bible. And that's why they started asking questions and they started questioning whether or not they wanted to be religious. But I could totally understand this reaction from people if the rules of the Bible were that if any gay people exist, you go to hell, or if any adulterers exist, you go to hell, or whatever. If any abortions happen at all, you go to hell. Then I could understand the pandemonium, the sheer chaos to make it illegal as fast as possible and to get people to stop doing it. But like, I mind so much of my own business, it's unreal. How do people have the energy to mind everybody else's business? I don't understand. It makes me exhausted just watching it. Like, that guy out there, he's out there when it's like 90 degrees outside. I'm like, bro, how do you even have the energy?
That's so, you should really go and like confront, like, just like bring your little GoPro strapped to your chest and be like, yo, tell me about God, and just like poke holes in his theology. It'd be so funny to watch.
Yeah, but it's Tennessee, so he'd probably just like push me into traffic or like shoot me or something. He'd be like,
Yeah,
"That's enough,"
no.
and then people would be like, "That's right, get that atheist, shoot her, shoot
You
her."
know, there was the TV show Jackass, right? Yeah, in the movie. So they had a bunch of like they're always getting knocked back by the insurance company and lawyers and stuff about certain stunts. But the one stunt they definitely couldn't pull off, that was just going to be, it was going to be millions of dollars to get insurance for, was to go to a church dressed as the devil. That was the one that they're like, nope, that one's like,
Why
you'll
would that
be,
one cost so much money?
because they might get shot. Because you know how there's that
Oh,
there's that scene of there's an episode where or it's one of the movies where Party Boy is dressed as a devil and he jumps out of the street, like he gets blown out of this like this hole in the ground in New York or somewhere, and he's like dressed as a devil and he's like, keep God out of California, or maybe it's California, keep God out of California, whatever. And it's like, it's just a funny shot. They wanted to do that but at a church, and they're like, no, you'll get like, you can get shot. So like, yeah, it's
I feel like that's a uniquely American concern. It's like,
100%. Yeah,
yeah, like
100%.
no, please don't do TikTok pranks. You will get shot instantaneously. Please don't do it. People will think you are really the devil and they will shoot you. Um, were you religious when you got married, or did you deconstruct
Yeah.
after you got married? Before?
No, the first time we slept together was on our wedding night. We were like devoutly
Wow,
religious. Yeah, so
wow.
like, I mean, when I say that, we did other stuff and like we found loopholes, but like not like extreme loopholes, but like, we did other stuff. But the first time like we had like sex, it was like on our wedding night. Yeah.
Wow. And so has she also deconstructed? Is she on her own personal
Yeah.
journey?
Yeah, pretty much. It's a bit of a story in that, like, we went to like, she when I was looking at young Earth creationism and evolution, I said to her, like, I don't need you to like believe the same things as I believe, but can I at least tell you what I've learned, just so you can know where I'm at, because this is very exciting and scary and stuff to me. And then she said, yeah, of course. And then I would share like, hey, look, I found this is really weird, or like, and then we'll talk about it, and it was like fun. But she wanted to show that she could she was supporting me, so she bought me
Yeah.
tickets to like a faith and science talk at the World Science Festival in Brisbane.
That's
And we went
cool.
along to it. Yeah, we went along to it. And there was like a stage with a Buddhist, a Christian, a Muslim, a Catholic, and an atheist all on stage, and they all were talking about how God is. There's faith and science can totally mix. It's totally fine. And then the atheist was AC Grayling, and he said, no, he's like, I don't think faith and science can mix, because they both start from, one starts presupposing a bunch of stuff, one tries to debunk as much as it can before it gets into the lab. And then afterwards I bought his book, and we got a photo with him and everything like that. And when we're leaving, Amy turned to me and said, I think what you're doing is good. And then that's when we ended up having a really open conversation about God and beliefs. And then I think from that point on, she didn't actively like start deconstructing, but I think she just started questioning more and more about her faith. And eventually I interviewed her on Deep Drinks, and she said, I don't think I'm a Christian. And I was like, okay, like, cool. Like,
yeah,
fine if you were, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder if also, just regardless of her own feelings, just watching someone go through such a shift and watching them really, because I feel like we've all been with people who are like, I'm vegan now, and you're like, okay, yeah, have fun, but watching somebody really go through it, really
Mhm.
flip the script and struggle and think and research and question, and it probably, watching its impact on your anxiety and stuff like that. I mean, there was probably a lot of positivity in seeing that change in you and seeing you find like answers that you were actually looking for the first time in a long time. So even if she wasn't deconstructing, I imagine seeing that happen firsthand is just really interesting and makes you want to support it for sure.
Yeah, I think so. And I think yeah, I think so. And it's like, I always make the joke that I'll like come in and I'll be like, you know, even before we're looking at stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, I just discovered this thing. It totally changes everything I thought about this one thing. And you know, and like in my head, I'm like, so therefore there's a knock-on effect into all these other areas of my life. And Amy would be like, oh cool, and like just cutting up a cheese board and be like, let's have some drinks. Like she doesn't like, she's like, she'll have like, I'll like, there'll be like earth-shattering, like worldview changing news, and she'll be like, interesting, and then she'll just go back to doing whatever she's doing. And I'm like, I don't have that ability. Like I'm just like, things need to like fit together. Like, so yeah, it was never like this huge like moment of like like existential dread or anything for Amy. But she did say like, when she started realizing like maybe there isn't a heaven, she got like really scared, and she was like, we should live our life to the fullest because maybe there isn't a heaven.
Yeah.
You know, and things like that. Yeah.
Well, and I also wonder if it's different deconstructing on your own versus deconstructing with a safety net there at home. You know, when you were doing it, you weren't sure like what you believed or who you could, you know, who you could talk to about it. But knowing that you were on a similar journey, maybe she felt like a lot safer exploring those aspects because it didn't feel alone. It didn't feel like she was going to be like looked at any different for who she was because you were there and you were already kind of going through it.
Well, it's I noticed too, a lot of relationships, they're like very much like a lot of people, especially in the Christian world. I don't know if this is not to rag on anyone's relationship style, but like a lot, like, you know, we had friends. It's like the guy came home with creatine and the which is like a workout supplement or something. I don't know. I don't work out. And the and the wife was like, tipped it down the sink. She's like, you're not drinking that. It's bad for you. And like that's such a foreign concept to like Amy and my relationship. It's like we're both individual people who can make individual decisions. That like, even if I do something that Amy doesn't necessarily like, or she does something that she doesn't like, we still encourage each other. Like, well, if you want to do that thing, then you know, you can do that. Like, we're individuals. Like, we're not like, so yeah. So I think that helped a little bit as well. But knowing that she thought what I was doing was good, that I wasn't doing it out of like, I didn't want to sin. Yeah, I didn't want to sin. I didn't want to like, it wasn't like something I was angry about or anything like that. But it was like, I think this is like, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this because I think it's important. And I think it's, you know, and I'm still doing that. I'm still wanting to be showing where I'm wrong. I still want to, like, if God's real, I want to believe in him. Like, so.
Yeah. And I think on the other side, on the very staunchly religious side, I think people look at atheists and they say, you want to be atheist so you can do drugs and have orgies and not give a fuck and do whatever you want and party hard. And it's like, no, I literally just don't want the rapture to be real. Like, that's it. Like, I literally just don't want the rapture to be real. And I want Kirk Cameron to stay out of my nightmares. That's it. That's it. Like, I'll live in peace. I'll be a quiet neighbor. I won't do anything to bother anyone. I just, you know, I want to eat pork and not feel bad about it, which the majority of Christians do anyway. So it's fine. And I just want the rapture to not be real. So, once that's checked.
So were you actually afraid of the rapture?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Right. Interesting.
Yeah. Not to the extent that I've read about since then. Like, rapture anxiety is apparently a real thing. I never had rapture anxiety. But when I was a kid, I genuinely did believe that there was going to be a moment where God would take everyone to heaven and all that would be left is their clothes and their cars, you know, just like the movie. And that if I wasn't a good enough Christian, I would make it to heaven. The only difference is I was cocky, so I always thought I was a good enough Christian. But I was worried about everybody I cared about. Like, I was worried about all my neighbors, and I didn't know if dogs got raptured. Like, would my pets still be on Earth? Who was going to take care of them? Like, it never occurred to me that I wasn't a good enough Christian, just because I just thought I was all that in a bag of chips, I think. But I did worry about a lot of other people. Like, when I would see my friend's dad like drink a lot, quote unquote, or like smoke a cigarette, like, oh my gosh, is he gonna make it? Is he gonna make it to the rapture? Yeah. So I thought about it a lot, but it never occurred to me that I wouldn't be included, though. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know if that makes me like a little piece of shit or if that makes me like a good Christian. I'm not sure. Because I definitely did not do my homework in church. That's for sure. My brother's in the chat. That's funny. He says, Kirk Cameron, that's the one I haven't thought about in a long time. You're welcome. You're welcome to your 90s nightmares, Kirk Cameron.
Kirk Cameron. What a funny dude.
Yeah.
There's
like it never occurred to me that my mom and my brother wouldn't be raptured or anything like that. But I did worry about pets and friends and stuff like that.
Well, a lot of I can't remember what it was. I think it was like a Vsauce video or something. But it was like people ask like who's going to heaven, who's going to hell, and like hardly anyone goes to heaven if you like look at the like broad statistics. Like because does Obama go to heaven? No. Does Trump go to heaven? No. Like so like everyone has a different opinion. But the person that consistently would go to heaven would be like the person who was doing the survey. So were you going to heaven? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean?
That's really funny. I did ask somebody on my podcast once who was very Christian. I asked him, I was like, am I going to hell? And he's like, I don't want to answer that. And I was like, answer it. Am I going to hell? Answer it. Because he's a good friend of mine. And I wanted him to be honest with me. Like it wasn't going to hurt my feelings, but I was curious. I was like, from what you know about me, because we're friends, am I going to hell? And he's always brought that up. He's like, that made me so uncomfortable. That made me so uncomfortable. And so he gave me some answer, about like, he doesn't know everything about like the end of times. But I was like, I see what you're trying to get out of it. I think the answer is yes. And he just didn't want to say so.
Isn't that like really, that's really telling though, like not to pick on your friend or anything, but it's really telling that like they're scared to answer it because they know it's like in some way they know it's like a horrible thing. It's like when you ask them, like my favorite thing to do is when you see like someone's preaching on TikTok at the moment, I just will go on there and say, did God kill the unborn babies in the womb when he flooded the earth? And then like you just watch their face like drop or like get angry or like start preaching even harder. Yeah. And it's like my favorite because it's a horrible thing. Like God, the Bible is full of stories about like God, parting the Red Sea to save his people. But that same God kept the gates of Auschwitz locked. You know what I mean? Like there are bigger things like stuff comes with baggage is what I'm saying.
Yes.
Like God flooded the earth because he was mad at sin. Well, what about the innocent creatures that were there? It's
And what I will say is I don't know how much exposure you have to Calvinists and Calvinism. They scare me.
No,
they're the only religious people that legitimately scare me. But if you were to ask a Calvinist that question, if you were to say, when God flooded the earth, does that mean he also killed all the unborn babies that were in the womb? They'd be like, yep. And you're like, ooh.
Yeah.
Like they're the ones who believe that God has already predestined and predetermined who's going to hell and who's not, and that you don't know which one you are until you die. They are very biblically literal. If the Bible says it, they believe it, even if it sucks, even if it makes God mean, even if it doesn't work out great for you in the end. So that's one thing I will say. Like there are some that they scare me and I don't want to live near them. But if you were to ask them those questions, they would be as honest as possible about it.
Well,
even if it makes it look bad.
Yeah, I actually I had a beer with a Calvinist this first and only ever conversation I've had with a Calvinist. And I had a beer with a Calvinist and they said that. They said like, I said, wait, so you believe that like people are born destined to go to hell? Like they're created by God, destined to go to hell. There's no option for them. They have no other ability to change that outcome. That's just, and he's like, yes. I'm like,
yes.
That seems like you worship a very cruel God.
Right.
And then he says, I know that can come across like that. And then he said, but you're a Pentecostal. He's like, well, you believe in, that God can heal people. He's like, I find that more immoral. He's like, what kind of a person believes that God can heal someone and isn't outside of a children's hospital every second of every day? What sick maniac like, and I'm like, just like, damn!
Oh, like, shots fired, shots fired. Shit. And I mean, great question, right? Like, great question. I mean, that's a really good question. And those are the kind of conversations that I think if people were being honest, those are the kind of conversations they don't want to have, but either they would have to admit they actually don't believe what the Bible says to the extent that they're supposed to, or they do, and that means a lot of horrible things are true. Now, Rebecca from Bread of Life brings up a good point. She said some of us don't believe in the rapture, and that's true. I've met lots of Christians who don't believe in the rapture, or their denomination. It's not a thing, but it's a thing. It's enough of a thing for millions of people to have rapture. It's enough of a thing that there's a word for it called rapture anxiety. And Vince, my boyfriend Vince, was watching a show earlier today. It was a crime show. It was a true crime documentary. and this person's house burned to the ground, and the man died screaming and writhing in this house. And like the whole thing was they were trying to figure out who set it on fire, and he was doused in gasoline. It was a bad situation. But at the very end, when they figured out who did it, and it took 30 years, it was a cold case, they finally figured out who did it. The woman was like, his mom was like, I just want to thank God that God granted us the blessing to find out who did this to my son. Like God granted us the grace and the blessing to find. And I was like,
yeah, fuck the investigators.
well,
God did
fuck the guy who burned in the house. Like,
yeah.
Like, so
it's like when
confused me.
It's like when like there's a miracle of God where like a house burns down, people die, but like a Bible is a little bit unscathed. It's like it's a miracle. It's like, what kind of a God? What?
Right.
Like
right. And I'm not saying God did it, but what I am saying is the logic that you're using to thank God for giving you the strength and the ability to find out who did it. Do you not wonder who burned? You were a Christian when the house burned down, right? So was he. So was the guy who burned it. That's all I'm saying is like, when people are like, thank God I found this house. I bought this new house or whatever. You're like, so you earned the money. You got on Zillow. You typed in, after figuring out, doing the math to find out exactly what your budget was. You found it. You mapped it out. You went and visited it. You put the down payment on. That was you, man. That was all you.
Like, there's I had a friend who they had a friend who was going through chemo, and they were like, we're praying for them, and the doctor said they got a 50-50 chance of it working, right? They're going through chemo, 50-50 chance. They're like anti-chemo, they're anti-vaxxer, all that kind of stuff, flat earthers as well. And the test results come in, and it's a really good improvement, like the best it could have been. And they said to me, quote, how can anyone deny God when you see results like that? So remember, it was a coin toss. It was 50-50. Okay. But then furthermore, this friend of mine is now converting to Calvinism, where they don't believe God can heal anyone. And I want to say to them, how can you deny that experience?
Right.
They're your words. How could anyone deny God?
You said that. And when I'm bringing up these examples, I'm not at all dogging on anyone who's Christian or who believes in God or whatever. I totally understand that all denominations are different. But if you're going to come out here with that logic, just swinging in the wind.
Make it consistent. Make it consistent. Yeah.
Make it consistent, or at least in the same instance, with the same energy that you're willing to put your answer out there, at least have that same energy towards defending it. That's all I'm asking. Like, there's nothing that I say on my podcast or on my channel that I don't have the energy to defend and talk about and explain. In fact, I'm excited to do it. If anybody ever wanted me to answer these questions, I would do it if I didn't feel like they were trolling me. But that's all I'm asking, is with the same energy that you're coming out here and you're changing these laws and you're making these demands and you're putting posters and statements and ads on my freaking Reddit and my Super Bowl or whatever about like God and Christianity and beliefs and what's wrong and what's right. At least have that same energy when I ask you to explain it or give me examples or show me proof. Right? That's all I'm asking. Your beliefs could be literally anything, and I will respect you if you're willing to defend it. Now, I won't respect it if it harms other people. If you're trying to pass a law that says like certain people shouldn't be allowed to exist or they should be illegal or whatever, that's terrible. But in terms of like your basic religious beliefs, just come out and really have a true, honest conversation about why it is that you believe it, and at least admit when you don't know something. When you're like, I don't know, I was just told this. I was just raised that way. That's why I think that. That's all I want, is just acknowledgement of where the loopholes are, where the big old gaps in the logic are. Because if one of us, if you or I got caught on one of these live streams getting stuck on a loophole, they'd be bringing that up. They'd be like, oh, so you don't know. Oh, so you don't know. Yeah. If somebody with like a gigantic platform on TikTok was caught doing the same thing, like not being able to answer a question, all the people would come into the comments, all the religious people being like, see, you don't know anything. And that little miniature sound bite would make its rounds or whatever. And it would be like, Christian destroys atheist with logic or whatever. So like,
Yeah.
where's that energy? Where's that energy when I come asking you questions very nicely? As Tim pointed out, I'm a very nice interviewer. Where's that energy?
Yeah, it is amazing. Part of the reason I moved everything from my post-faith channel to Deep Drinks is because I didn't want to scare Christians off from coming on my channel, so I wanted to have like nice conversations with everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rebecca, Bread of Life, one of my favorite people to talk to. We fundamentally disagree on so many other things, and she still took time out of her day to show me how to use StreamYard and change my life. Like,
That's
I
awesome.
love talking to people. You don't have to agree with people to have a conversation, and you don't have to have a conversation that at the end somebody's a winner and somebody's a loser. But if somebody's going to come out and say and make statements the way that they make them, then why am I the bad guy when I ask them to answer those questions? Like, why does that make me the bad guy?
100%.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody says, I need more stimulating combos like this. I have them, Tim. You just need to spend more time on my channel. You just need to spend more time on my channel. Just come over to my house. No, don't do that, please. Not that I don't like you, Tim, but so
no, I'll come over and we can all go down to the Street Preacher and we'll do a live episode of Deep Drinks at your house, and then we'll go drunk down to the Street Preacher and start questioning him.
I wonder if he would be on my show. I wonder if he'd be on my. I've never asked him.
That would be. Wouldn't that be wild?
If he would it would require him going home and getting on his computer though, and I don't know that he would ever do that. He probably lives on that corner. Maybe I could just stream him in from there.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could do that. Yeah, you could do a live stream from. Yeah, you could work.
Because legitimately, I would love to ask that guy some questions. I wouldn't want to like make fun of him or anything. I just want to ask him some questions.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not what he says is funny, right? Whether or not if he says something funny and I laugh, that's just what he said. But do you think that calling yourself an atheist, you're an atheist, right? Or do you consider yourself agnostic?
Yeah, like it depends. It depends. Everyone has a different definition. I don't have an active belief in God. I'm not convinced of the existence of God. That's what I would say.
Do you think that's changed how you're a husband and a father?
Yeah, hugely actually. We actually, I remember before, because we went through IVF, and we were on the fertility train for like 5 years.
Wow.
And there's a lot of stories there too, but we funny enough, we've got photos of like the sperm, not photos, but like a video of the sperm hitting the egg and like forming multiple cells. Like we've got, his name's Atlas, and like he's only 4 months old the other week, and like we've got like, how you have those photos of like people like growing up. We've got that from like the cells, like the first cells that split. It's really cool.
Do they just keep a camera on it all the time just in case?
So there's like a plane, like 9 focal planes over the sperm and the egg, and it takes a photo every 15 minutes. So you see it's like it changing and like splitting into 2 cells and splitting, and then like you see it like multiply and like all that stuff. It's really cool.
That is cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
And then because it was IVF, we had like a screening every 2 weeks, so we'd see like 3D models of it growing, and like it's all recorded, which is cool. But so I remember sitting down and going like, okay, well, what are our like parental values? Like, what do we think brings virtue to a life? Like, it's very easy as a Christian to go, stealing is wrong. Like the 10 Commandments say stealing is wrong, so it's wrong. Is it wrong? Like let's start from a foundation of like let's justify why stealing's wrong. Let's justify why lying's wrong. Let's justify why this is okay, this isn't okay. Like what do we want to emphasize? What do we want to not emphasize? Let's look at everything. Quickly we got to, a lot of the 10 Commandments are pretty spot on. Like, don't steal, don't murder, don't lie. But you can, like in certain instances, whatever. But then I started thinking like broader, like what are like my values as a father that I want to bring onto my children, and I wrote them down. Do you want to hear them?
Yeah.
Okay, let me just quickly find them.
You have everything like at the ready. I don't think I've ever asked you about anything that you haven't just had ready to go, like copy paste the link.
So so it's because like I'm on the computer all day, every day, pretty much. But it's just in my Google Doc, so it's just like all that. I just have to search it. But so the parental values. So this is what I wrote: parental values that I consider important. intellect / critical thinking. So I don't need I don't want anyone to be like a brainiac, but like be able to like explain what they believe and why. I think that's like a good thing. Kindness. Kindness to other humans, to animals, to having empathy for other people. Now, whether or not I'll get to hang on, I'll explain something after this anyway. Honesty, that's a huge one. That just goes without saying. Honesty about themselves, about like being honest about who they are, about honesty just overall, not just lying and stuff, but not just like and telling the truth, but like being honest with themselves about how they feel in a certain situation and everything like that. Overcoming fear. So not
that's a good one. That's a good one.
Like if let's say they're scared of the dark, doesn't mean like I'm going to like lock them in a dark room, but eventually like we're not gonna be the kind of parents that like, no, you can have a nightlight on forever. Like it'll be like, having a conversation with them about like, okay, like we're gonna confront this. It's not something that we just accept as part of our lives.
Right. Rational versus irrational fears.
Yeah, exactly. Impulse control. So building the ability to say no or make calculated decisions and not give into impulsive behavior. And balance. So they're things. Now, in saying that, all of those things, what I realized was, they're not things that I think that Atlas would learn by me telling them about them. They're things that they're virtues that I have to reflect in my own life, and I think I'm pretty good at a lot of those. One thing I'm probably not very good at is impulse control. So that's something like the beers, the midnight beers, and the cheese sandwiches at like midnight are an example. But like so there's some things that I consider really important. But like I want to kind of show Atlas how to do that by reflections in my own life, and then Amy had like same thing: kindness, honesty, self-care, which is a big one, like taking care of themselves, prioritization of school and hobbies. So like what's important, are they really smart kid and they're really loving academia, then like get them a tutor and get them, if they love sports, then God forbid, then get them into a soccer team, something. And my friend, just to drop in a few things that my friends were talking about that we've kind of adopted, because we had this conversation with friends, is one of my friend Tom, he said, be self-sufficient. So like no one's going to like, you're not going to like yourself, right? You started doing comedy. No one's going to come to you and say like, hey, come to this comedy club and start doing it. You had to probably pursue it under your own. Yeah.
Right.
Well, but that's not, be self-sufficient is like cooking and cleaning and knowing, you have like adults that don't know how to do that stuff, but don't wait for other people to hand you opportunities. Be proactive.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I tell people all the time, some of the best opportunities I've ever had in life, I had to make happen myself. Who knows how long you sit around waiting for somebody to do it for you.
Yeah. Build a tribe of people around you that help. So good people. So like one of my favorite quotes is like, you hang around dogs, you get fleas. So like hang around with people. Like I have friends that are like drug addicts now. They're like their life is spiraled out of control. They're still friends. I'm still there for them if they need to talk, but I don't invest in that relationship as much as I invest in a relationship of someone that's like, because I've got a priority as like as a partner, as a parent, as a friend to my friends, to make sure that I'm constantly growing. So I will invest in relationships that for people that I aspire to be like, or who lift me up. So I'll actively pursue those relationships rather than pursue the relationships with old friends that every time I talk to them, we're getting pulled over by the police or something.
Yeah. Or they don't serve you in a beneficial way to continue to be connected with. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think something really cool about parenting too, that a lot of people, I don't think either think about this or maybe they disagree, but when you have rules for your kid, you're not saying, I as a person do them perfectly, therefore you should. I think letting your kid watch you be imperfect is one of the coolest ways to teach them. And I don't mean that in a do what I say, not what I do sort of way, but like apologizing to your kid when you yell at them for something, that you lost your cool for a second, letting them see that these are the rules for everybody. These aren't just the rules for you. These are the rules for mom. These are the rules for dad. These are the rules for grandma, grandpa, whoever. And not all of us are perfect. And we don't always get to, you know, we don't always get them right, but we're all as a group working towards these rules to better ourselves as a whole. Because I think a lot of people are so stressed out to make sure they're so perfect in front of their kid, and then they burn out or they get stressed or something, when you can teach them from a young age that you're a human being too.
Yeah, like I think a big thing is like if Amy and I have an argument, we make sure we don't like go into another room and have that argument away from, like, even though we won't when he's older, we'll have that argument or that conversation, but we'll make sure they see the whole thing and the resolution of that conversation. Because even though it takes hours, like we don't, you know, it's not about hiding the bad things from, you know, your child, but it's about saying sorry when you get things wrong and things like that. Yeah.
And like teaching them nuance, you know, not everything's black and white. Sometimes it takes time, and sometimes you hear things wrong the first time, or you've changed your mind in the hours since, or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really great.
Yeah, it's fun. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
Like losing faith and everything.
I feel like you lost faith, but you seemingly gained so much more in the interim since then.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I agree with that.
Well, David, I want to be respectful of your time, and I really appreciate that I've held you way longer than I said that I would.
No, that's okay.
If people wanted to catch you, if they wanted to see more of your interviews or your streams, where could they go to find you?
You can go to youtube.com/@deepdrinks, and you'll be on very shortly. I'll just post a link in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh, I might not, because it might not let me because I'm not a mod, but you chose this as your choice of drink. So we're going to be drinking. Oh, cool. We're going to be posting this. We're going to be drinking this on Deep Drinks together. It's going to be really fun. I've already had a little taste. I couldn't resist. So yeah, we'll be talking about your story, and yeah, it'd be really good. So just so people know, I have conversations with people about religion, philosophy, and human rights over a choice of drink that they choose. So the drink sets the tone of the conversations, and yeah, it's real fun time over there. So if you like me or you like content, go check it out.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your Jimmy Snow episode stream conversation chat. I thought that was great. Even though I'm totally biased, I thought that was great. But I really enjoy your content, and I think it's a super friendly place to go hear about differing ideas over just a couple of casual drinks. It's like being a part of a group of 3 people just drinking and talking about life and interacting with the chat. So it's great.
I do love when people drink alongside. Like they'll be like, I'm drinking a Milo, or I'm drinking, you know, vodka or whatever. Like it doesn't have to be alcoholic, but like I like when people join in the ceremony of drinking something.
And they post in the chat what they've got and say,
yeah.
It's 8 a.m. where I'm at. I'm drinking coffee.
Yeah.
Or vodka, whatever. That's fine too. Yeah, well, this has been a really fantastic conversation, and I can't wait to talk to you more next week. For people in Central Time Zone in the United States, we're going to be talking at 7 p.m. on what is that the 3rd here? Let me look. Why is there so many pages? Yes, that's going to be the 2nd, June 2nd, 7 p.m. here in Central Time in the United States.
There's the let me just, because I do need to show everyone, I think, the artwork, because
please
it's
do.
If you can share the screen. There's so we have well, let me just expand this because this is like really but we have like Secularity coming on tomorrow, craft beers with Christ. We actually had
that's really great.
I
thought he was the one in the middle.
It cost me $45 to get 2 of his beers, because they're like craft beers from like around where he lives. So like totally worth it though. But look at this artwork for your episode. I mixed Veggie Tales with a picture of Jesus with AI art, and it was just wild. So
you mixed Veggie Tales with a picture of Secularity.
Yeah, but it's like, this haunts my, like, this is a nightmare. Like I wanted to get a photo of this and hang it on my wall, because it is scary. Like it looks into my soul. I don't like it. And what is this dude doing back here? Like it's just I don't know.
That's like nightmare fuel for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, we've got some really cool episodes, and we've actually got a sex education panel coming up in 46 hours as well, which will be, you know, we have a marriage and family therapist, a porn star that used to be a pastor, You know, we like it's just like it's a wild,
Wow.
it's a wild
I've
run.
heard
Yeah.
the opposite. I've heard of people who quit porn and like got religion. I've never heard of the antithesis. That's wild.
Nicole, she's amazing. She's super nice, and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
You should get her on your channel. I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
if
was
you
gonna
reach
say I'm
out,
gonna watch
she
that
might.
episode for sure.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
wild.
we had her on there. So this is the episode. This is like the previous. This is like the previous one, which was Purity Culture Horror Stories. So it was the same group of people, but now I've added Amy, my wife. But yeah, it was. She talks about like going from being on food stamps to being like a really successful OnlyFans creator and stuff. And you know, it was a wild experience. And we actually rated sexual sins, which was really fun. Like we put them on like a tier list. So like, you know, is butt stuff okay? Like where is it a hellbound sin, butt stuff, or is it like an okay sin? Like what about kinky sex positions? So yeah, it was all fun. It was a fun time.
That sounds like a good time. Oh, there was my face down there. I forgot. I was
Oh
like,
yeah,
wait, I totally forgot I did that. Yeah.
that's when you we did the
When
Jimmy
I
go
told
fuck
Jimmy
yourself.
to go fuck himself. And
Yeah, it
then
was good
he
fun.
sent me a message, which usually is the opposite of how that works. You tell somebody to go fuck themselves, they block you.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun, David. I really appreciate your time, and your story as well. I really appreciated you sharing your story, because I think people need to see that there is a life and there's peace and there's joy and there's success after having left the church, even when it feels like there's nothing left for you afterward, or when you're not sure, or when you feel anxiety. I think you're a prime example of somebody who can find all of those things after leaving the church, even though you spent your whole life supporting it and believing it and studying it and becoming a part of it. And people just need to know that's an option. You know, I'm not saying that everybody should leave their church or anything like that, but it's definitely an option, and there's a lot of joy there.
There's more. I would say there's more. There's definitely more peace for me. But what I would say is this is what I told myself, and this is what I still firmly hold as true, is even if you investigate your beliefs and you do it open-minded and everything. Well, first of all, I thought the answers would lead to God. So I was like, there's no reason I need to protect this thing. I don't need to protect my faith because the answers will obviously lead to God. But the reason why you do that investigation, let's say you've got a Christian watching now, or a Buddhist or someone, and they want to investigate what they believe and why. That investigation will only help them. It can't negatively affect them. All it can do is either lead them to the truth, or they'll have a better understanding about why other people believe what they believe, so then they can better justify their own beliefs. So it's like, it's only good. It's only good to investigate, seek, ask questions, and never stop. Like I still ask questions about religion, philosophy. That's what we do over in Deep Drinks. So
ask questions about everything. Question everything. Even if it's not about religion, question everything. Learn as much as you can. Know exactly why it is you believe things you believe, and don't be afraid to have that conversation. Don't be the guy who never answers anybody's questions and says stuff on the internet and then dips out before anybody can, challenge them in any way. But yeah, I really like that. I like that message. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate everything that you've had to say and share and encourage for people.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.